are here tonight. It's August 18th for the Facilities Committee meeting. I don't believe we have any public comments, so we can move right on to agenda item 2, which is the presentation from ICS.
It's fine.
You're fine.
Thanks again for having us in. I got Cody West here, Doug Taylor, who should be familiar with as well. We're pleased to come in and give you kind of a summary of what we found over the last 6 or so months, working closely with the administration, going through your buildings and identifying capital needs and kind of plan for the future. So many of you have seen this presentation before. I'm going to try to be brief, respectful of your time. We'll certainly be available to answer any questions or dig in on any of these particular slides if you want to take note, or you can interject if you'd like at that time. So as you recall, back in the winter months, we were asked to come in and take a look at these facilities and give you guys that outlook. This was kind of the process behind it. It's essentially state-driven. It's very collaborative, where we go in and get a bunch of information. We load that and house it in our hosted software, P360. So that really, all this data gathering that we do, all the analysis, gets put into there, and it really manages that information over time and keeps it nimble, keeps it a living document, living understanding. So we get through talking all these things, we'll mention it over and over again, is that we have all this information. This is just some way of synthesizing it, looking at it, and we can look at these scenarios over time and kind of build a year-to-year outlook on what the priorities are for the district. So these are some of the examples of the things that we went in and did at the schools. Of course, interviewed the staff, put out these surveys to try to identify the things that aren't maybe obvious when you walk into a building. This is a particular problem on this day or not. Look at those reports, rolled in the Pennsylvania Economy League's demographics analysis, and so forth. A short summary of some of the different items we found with our initial surveys of those principals and staff throughout the buildings, the HVAC techs, talking with the administration, Craig, and so forth. Very helpful in scheduling all that over time. Again, we went through all the buildings, got a great deal of information. This is a slide that some of you should be familiar with. It just tries to approximate the last time the building was operated holistically, the last time since a major renovation. Good. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, my eyes are going on. This is the energy usage intensity, the EUI, that is just a ratio of the amount of energy that's used at the building over the amount of square feet. So it kind of tells you where your energy lines are and gives you an idea of where to look for opportunities to save operationally, right, or when you're doing efficiency upgrades. Appreciate you pointing that out. The demographic analysis, you had the Pennsylvania Economy League perform. As you know, the enrollment at the district has gone down from the peak in the mid-teens there to what we see today. A significant drop, and then the projection from now going forward is just a little bit more of a drop and kind of steadying out into the next decade. So a level out of students and kind of stemming that tide over time of decreased enrollment. Again, that was part of a larger report, so that's just a little side piece of that. This is a look at the capacity, right? So the other piece of, when you're looking at demographics, what you expect as far as students is what the buildings can actually hold, the amount of students that they can educate inside of all these buildings. This basically shows you're pretty steady, going into the future, don't have any immediate school needs for expansion based upon the projected enrollment. And this is something you're going to want to look at and have looked at over time just to confirm that the expectations are the same. It's a process that you want to go into every several years to get a better idea of what's coming down the pipe to be able to look appropriately out and how to handle that. This is a look at that same capacity, but with full-day kindergarten. So if you bring in full-day kindergarten throughout the district, you're going to have a change in your capacity. Right, so a building that could handle 2 half-day kindergartens, the capacity for that school essentially gets cut in half at that point because you have to have those people there, those children there for the entire day. So it shows some potential things that we're going to have to navigate as time goes on. There's plans in the works throughout the district. It's not anything desperate necessarily at this time, just something that we need to manage and look at over time. Right, so this is a look at the buildings and their replacement value. Doug, you want to take it over now?
Sure. Thank you.
Sure.
So as John said, these are the replacement values of the buildings. This is important just, not only to give you a snapshot of what it would cost if you had to replace any of your facilities, but it also helps us then with the determination of what you should allocate or try to allocate each year toward capital projects. And that's done by either using the Association of Physical Plant Administrator guidelines, which is APA, National Academy of Sciences. Both have very good recommendations, and 1.5% to 3% of the replacement value, really equates to 12 million to 24 million. Now, I can tell you when I used to be in Craig's shoes, the upper end of that was not a realistic number for any district to try to, set aside monies for. So obviously we were shooting for the lower end of that, which is in the 12 million range, when you're trying to avoid deferring projects.
Well, can I ask a question here?
Yes.
So we've never spent 12 million on maintenance projects.
No, not in my time here, we haven't got.
So are we sufficiently then, we're in a deteriorated school because we're not
I don't
spending?
think so. No, I mean, again, that is a recommendation. I was always at the lower end in my life when I managed these for a school district. So again, you're certainly not shooting for 24 million. You're
Well,
more
that's
in
not
the.
realistic.
Yeah, it's important to note that these are based upon the approximation of cost today. Right, so this number of $810 million may have been 500, something. It's dramatically increased.
Replacement cost.
Yeah, the replacement costs over time. So based on today's market value of it, again, it's an approximation. It's imperfect, and as we know, school districts are very good at making choices and maintaining equipment and stretching those parameters best they can.
Another metrics just to take a look at what the conditions of schools are. Generally in the 20 to 25 year range is when mechanical systems and some of those major components start to get tired in buildings. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that those buildings are in need of major renovation. If you're doing a good job maintaining some of those systems, even though they shoot past that range, it may not require a major renovation, depending on how you're maintaining the infrastructure. But it's just a guideline to tell you when you start to hit that 20 to 25 year range, you need to start thinking about more major infrastructure upgrades. And then these are the 11 categories when our team assessed the facilities, the items that were identified as part of that study. There may be some things that are outside of this, but generally these are the categories that we utilized for that study. And then to demonstrate, when we talked about the 20 to 25 year range, again, it's not just us speaking those words. There are associations and companies that recommend the same thing. ASHRAE is a well-recognized organization, as is BOMA. And you can see that they're talking about 25 years for boilers, 30 years for windows. The infrastructure today, it's not like it was when they used to build those in the 50s. Those boilers were like steamships. They last 50, 60 years. But the equipment that you put in today is definitely not going to last you 60 years like the old equipment may have. Building systems, the current elementary school. So this is the red, orange, yellow, green heat map kind of assessment of the facilities. And you can see the scores in there. There's a lot of red. There's some orange, which means it's catching, getting closer to the red. But just to give you some idea as to, what was observed throughout the elementary schools. And then for the middle school, high school, and the ancillary buildings, the same heat map to show you, the aging, some of the aging equipment. Obviously, the more green, the better. Yellow is good too, but the orange and red are when we have to start, taking a look at those systems. And this is the district in totality and projected 5 years from now, where those systems are going to head throughout the next 5 years. And there's you can look classroom HVAC. That column is pretty red. Lighting is pretty red. Again, just an indication of where some of these systems are headed, and something that as a team we'll review and establish the best approach for the district over the next 5 to 10 years. Not going to go through, there's about 13 slides here that shows each one of your buildings. I won't go into detail. The first slide basically is an indicator. The facility priorities are those priorities that came from our team's assessment of the buildings, but also the questionnaires and feedback from your team and staff. So those priorities were established as a team. The condition assessment numbers, the summaries for each one of these schools is listed, but we'll show those numbers in a minute in the summary. What you will see, though, as you go through these are some commonalities amongst the buildings and what those needs are. And I won't, again, belabor these slides. But you can see some of the photos and the buildings that we were talking about. HVAC certainly is a common theme.
So when they all ask for LED light, is that from the people in the building, or is it just something that?
Yeah, so the LED lighting would be, if you went back to those systems that we looked at and have the life expectancy, that wouldn't qualify as something that's a high priority item, right? But it's an energy savings, right? So if you were doing something else in the building, you might want to tack that on as another project that would go with it, because it has some payback to it. So many of these things that you're looking at aren't payback items. Right. LED lighting is one, and it's also something that improves the educational environment, right? Particularly if you have an old building that has some inconsistent coloring, some inconsistent coverage and so forth. When you go in and do a holistic replacement of them, you're going to engineer it, right? So you have some optimal, you're meeting new standards, you consistent lighting across that. It's supposed to correspond with an improved educational environment. So it's something you would definitely consider doing. It's one of those things that doesn't really make the first list of priorities that you would want to do necessarily, unless there was some other motivating factor that was going on. In other words, if you're going in and renovating the building and doing a bunch of all the aesthetics and the roof and so forth, there'd be some economies of scale of you doing it. It's certainly something you want to keep in the back of your mind because it's got some nice payback aspects to it. All those other things that I kind of mentioned. So again, when we're going in there and looking at all those different systems, we're trying to take a holistic look of everything that conceivably you want to touch as part of the maintenance of maintaining the building, or something you could look at into the future. So it's just another line item.
Do we track how many ballasts fail? Mostly for us, fluorescent, right?
We do, through our work order system, we do.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody ever just, I know some of my buildings, when one fails, we replace with an LED. Is that something we've ever looked at?
So when a ballast goes bad, do we decide that it's time to
Because you gotta
replace
pay
with
for
LED?
the ballast and then you swap it out.
I would think something that would probably, what we would talk about is depending on when we're scheduling projects. So if there is something that, like we've talked about on prior occasions, if we're going to be up above the ceiling and replacing different assets of the building, that might be something where we base timing of lighting. But failed ballast, we swap out the ballast at those points because that's the most cost-effective option.
Yeah, so it's like a maintenance item, right? As these things age, it's not something that's going to keep the kids out of school. It's going to be a maintenance item. It's a cost item. Certainly, Craig, the other folks that are maintaining those could be doing other things. The other side is like you could have that policy when we lose these, we dump it, we direct wire it, and put in a bulb with a dry runner or something like that, and that's a reasonable outcome. When you're talking about a grand scale, those things tend to be dependent on the cost of it, the first cost of them, a little less efficient because it's tough to maintain consistency in your aesthetic over time, right? You're changing those things out. It's certainly probably not going to match super well. So it's just, there's a couple of moving parts that you want to consider. And generally, when you do that, you want to do them in a wing of building, like it's a summer project. Those are the type of things that can be done internally, right? Those are projects that you just set up right way and you say, hey, we're going to take this side over summer, some period, if you have some excess bandwidth, that you can implement yourself. In certain circumstances, right? But it's tough to do that for a whole building, like a high school. Generally speaking, staffs internally have loads of other things to do during those summer months or whatever. But there's a lot of ways to kind of slice that over time.
And what John said, it really depends on the space. Like, we upgraded the lighting in the wrestling gym. It was a space that we didn't have to worry about displacing anybody. We could easily make improvements to the lights without having to worry about affecting the schedule of school.
Did you guys do that internally?
We also did the 2 gymnasiums.
Good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did 2 gymnasiums. The wrestling gym we did during this past
So it's
school
kind
year.
of an ongoing thing already, so you're doing it room by room.
Yeah, we were able to order the lighting and do that ourselves internally.
That's very
But
cost
it depends on the scale of it.
I understood, doing the whole building,
Mhm.
obviously. But there's no rush to do it, so it could be piecemeal.
It's something to look into.
Yeah, that's very accurate. I mean, there's, tends to be something people do en masse because there's some incentive or they're seeking some sort of payback on it, or they're trying to subsidize some other thing that they're doing and make the cash flow. But, part of what we do, part of this planning process, part of the ongoing collaboration is identifying the proper way to implement these things, whether it's through
Sure.
design build, cooperative purchasing, self-implementation, and understanding all these things and having one solid look at it, you can kind of divide and conquer and choose your path.
The only thing I'd add to that, relative to lighting, we said wouldn't be a priority, unless it is, right? Unless you have a school that has very tired lighting, or you have programs that require, a different level of lighting rendition because of special programs or what you may have. Then, if it's your priority, it becomes a priority. So,
I didn't think we'd get stuck too much on lighting here. It's kind of different discussion, but I think I had sent it to some of the admin staff, and I think to the board as well, that Electrical Contractors and Maintenance Magazine did a 3-part series discussing linear fluorescent lighting being phased out within a certain period of time. In the U.S. itself, they're already phasing out the production of linear fluorescence. So, I mean, it's almost going to become a necessity at some point for us to start to upgrade and look to upgrading it, because those manufacturers have gone away from manufacturing ballast to manufacturing drivers and LEDs. So I think it's one thing to kind of keep on our radar to stay forward thinking, because, I mean, every school in America is going to hit that wall where you can't get linear fluorescence or compact fluorescence anymore. Everybody's going to scramble, and then we'll be stuck with.
Yeah, you see that with the obsolescence of many technologies, especially, I'm sure you see, Craig, with different types of refrigerants and so forth, as they get either outlawed because of some green initiative or because they're not being manufactured, not profitable, whatever. Those are certainly things that are going to be on the radar as we manage this through time. So, in other words, as those edicts come out or these other things come out, those are things that we're going to introduce into the discussion of priorities. But generally speaking, lighting in particular is not something that folks focus, when they're up against a series of needs. That's not generally a super high one, because you can limp along. That may not even be the best term for it, but you can manage certainly for a long time without a holistic approach to it.
So this slide is a 10-year snapshot of the facility assessment summary, and this is taking all the buildings into consideration over a 10-year period, and in totality, those projects, are in the $202 million range. What I would say, though, is what, dollar value of those $202 million does the district actually have to spend to make the buildings, compliant and where you would want those facilities today. And John's going to speak to that momentarily. It's certainly not the entire $202 million, right? That includes everything that was identified, but not all of those are high priority items. So,
But would LED lighting be in there right now?
No.
You have 200.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's part of it.
So that's more of a wish list than a has to be done.
That's
So,
right.
you'll
It's
talk
conceivable costs, putting some sort of budgetary number that, just so you can make decisions when you're going through, what are we prioritizing, does it make sense? It has to be part of the list, to have the full picture, whether it's a priority or not. We're going to talk about that just a little bit. It's also important to note that these are escalated, 4%, so if something isn't coming due for 8 years, 8 years of 4% in there. So like if you had a big check that you could sign today, it wouldn't be $202 million. This is an approximation cost over the next 10 years for the full portfolio of schools. And we're going to talk about the different things that you could immediately look that are going to meet the bottom line criteria, guiding principles that you might want to undertake when prioritizing these.
So John's going to speak to that momentarily. It does include the $10 million allowance for the campus study that's being done. The other notes are, 10 years is essentially half of the life cycle of a lot of these facilities.
The study isn't $10 million.
Not the study,
Read the fine print.
right, not the study. And again, this is not the plan of the district, right? This is for us to identify the needs and then get together and establish an actual plan for the district. So with that, John, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, sir. Right, so we start off with a big list of items that we conceivably use to maintain these buildings, and you have to get to something that's more realistic or a better prioritization of using the funds of the district. So one of the first things that seems to resonate with folks, and a good way of starting with prioritization, these kind of guiding principles we have across the top in bold. Ensure warm, safe, and dry, right? So we got to make sure that's not, other things aren't being rained on because the roof is insufficient, or the fire alarm systems are out of date or inadequately updated. They're going into obsolescence, can't get parts for them, things like that. So that qualifies some of these categories immediately excluded from warm, safe, and dry. Lighting, right? Lighting's not going to keep you out of the building generally unless you have some sort of systemic problem as part of a large automation system. Right size capacity, you guys had the Breslin folks in here talking before. They give a lot of information to you. Those are the type of things that we carry forward into any sort of plan for implementation. Just so you have some decisions kind of to make and some outlooks to look at that, talking about full day kindergarten and so forth, making sure that the buildings are sized appropriately to meet those needs over time and address educational program needs. So similar to that, things are going to come up over time. They're going to bring it to priority, right? There's some different mandate from the state, there's some different need within the community, there's some different drive from the public that brings other priorities into this list, right? So those are the type of things that you're going to look at, now and in the future on how do you prioritize for this basic set of information and understandings that we have. So these are, again, those different categories of systems that we talked about. I'm not going to run through each one of these unless you want me to. But so for the accessibility line item, a couple things got pulled out of that. Elevator, wheelchair lifts, ramps. These are kind of must-haves, right? But there's other things that you might want to address or might need to address for code compliance if you were to do some sort of high-level major infrastructure improvements. They might get triggered into doing them. Suffice to say, this is the first look at implementing those kind of guiding principles of warm, safe, dry, right size, and addressing educational needs applied to that $202 million that we saw there.
Hold on. So are we deficient at all in ADA at this point? We're not aware of it.
Nothing that's been
There's
pointed
one.
out.
So there's every building, right, that's not brand new is going to have some sort of ADA issues as time goes on. So if you have a building that's
Until you modify it.
Yeah, you can either modify it, depending upon the severity of the need, right, or whether there's some sort of access that can accommodate folks there. But there's also an aspect of it when you get to a certain level of renovation where you're triggered into meeting all those new code requirements. So when we say these, accessibility issues and so forth, they're ones that the deficit between current code standards or things that you might conceivably do and where they're at now. And it's an approximation, right, because these things change over time. There's certain things about the widths of doorways that are just kind of inescapable depending upon the age of the building, right? If a door is built into a 3-foot or 5-foot drop from the hallway, just wide enough, not much that you can do about it. You're not really expected to do things about that unless you undertake larger projects. So this is really a reduction of that line item into things that are more pressing, things that you want to address because they are critical to the accessibility needs, rather than just bringing them up to today's standards. If that makes sense.
The second one was the asbestos.
The asbestos, there's nothing removed from the asbestos, I don't believe.
Is that it? Are we have asbestos?
Is there something that
We have a company that takes care of all that for us, so
Oh,
we have a log that we keep of everything as far as asbestos is concerned.
ECS.
Yes, environmental controls, yeah. They do all of our asbestos related tracking.
So again, these are, there's reports that show what needs to be done. We've included the cost for that remediation in the report rather than putting it as something secondary. Okay, that doesn't mean something you need to do necessarily today. We've included those costs because they're certainly, meet the bar for a prioritization.
But
Maybe not the first priority, but it certainly belongs in that list of things you could, first line consider.
Asbestos removal, and just to circle back, and maybe I missed this, was that to be included in updates and renovations, or is that a completely separate line item to abate and remove? the
So if you
asbestos?
look at this right here, the second line down there says asbestos removal and encapsulation. That is the sum. What we're saying is when we're going from this larger, high level, this is all the conceivable costs. When we go into that level of prioritization, generally speaking, this is not something that we're going to say, we don't want to include the cost for long-range planning. I'm not saying you just need to spend this tomorrow or something like that. It's just that we don't, and again, this is going to be something that over time, we're going to work on what are the potential deferments, what are the potential things that we include, right? We're going to have some more direct discussions about the specifics of each one as we kind of, and that's the process incidentally. So we identify these long-term needs, we get an understanding of the scale, right? We decide what could be budgeted, then we work and drill into these individual priorities and find out what the, more direct understanding of the costs are, more direct understanding of what the scope, because these are understandings of needs at the schools, but they're not like fully fleshed out projects.
I guess,
Right.
I guess my question is it a separate, for abatement, or is this like we're replacing plumbing and then we're gonna abate the pipes as we go?
Right.
Like, is it, I mean, because if you're not touching it, then there's no reason to abate it, so.
Now, you could have friable, and that's a problem with your friable information, friable asbestos on the piping and so forth. It's gotta be contained, and it's gotta be rewrapped or removed, one or the other. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Do you have some color back there?
Yeah, I can. So, the district has a company that tracks and maintains and actually, from my understanding, performs all of the work associated with all of the environmental. It's not just an asbestos thing. There's other hazardous materials, right? Not just in buildings, but anyway. So the costs that are in the assessment, which are captured here, they're not coming from that company per se. They're kind of set asides that we want to include to set money aside over the next 10 years to address all of those needs, right? And like you said, Mr. Kaufman, these aren't things that have to be addressed today. If you were to do, like you said, a project in an area where there's known hazardous material, it would need to be addressed as part of that project. And that the reports are all available on the district's website, and this is an approximation over the next 10 years of how much that portion of the need would cost. And like John said, the first pass at prioritization is just taking this larger set of components and trying to determine which should be included and which could potentially be deferred, to come up with a plan that's feasible, fundable, and fiscally sound.
Yeah, so it isn't necessarily a plan, it's just a list of components for
Right.
us that you would consider to meet that criteria. Right, so we're not coming and say, hey, spend this. It's
Right.
These are the things that we would include as priorities, things that, as I said, need more understanding as we work through the priorities. Thanks, Vicky.
How do we get from the 200 million to something that's worked? How do we?
Right, so the first way that we looked at this was removing things that could be easily deferred, lighting, right, windows and things like that. Things that aren't necessarily going to keep you out of the building. They're going to keep teachers teaching, students in the class, right?
You can't defer that forever.
You can't defer that forever. No, you definitely can't. But, like, for instance, lighting and so forth isn't a capital item until you make it one necessarily. Windows, right, certainly are things that I think it's 30 years what they're calling for in that, the BOMA ASHRAE guidelines. And we know that there's buildings that have windows that are 60 years old. They just have to be maintained, right? They're not going to be the most efficient, but they're never something that pays for themselves. And generally aren't things, so long as they have some level of maintenance to them, aren't things that are deteriorating the building, like active leaks or something like that. Definitely look at those things. And they're not going to be as energy efficient, right? Maybe they don't have the coating that you would want in a modern scenario, but they're not certainly things that when you're looking at the grand scheme of, a large list of priorities, easily deferred. Furniture, fixtures, equipment. Those are things that you can defer. They can come out of different budgets necessarily if you're looking at it that way. So again, going through this list, there's a series of things that we put in the first pass, and there's a series of things that we've excluded, but they're all still maintained as part of that repository of understanding and as they're addressed. Right? So we have the 2025 projects that are being completed now, we have 2026 projects that are in development for being addressed and implemented. Those things are loaded into the software and the understanding such that future scenarios, when we run these things, those costs aren't in there anymore, and an understanding of when they are to be done the next time around, that life cycle is, so that the chart gets updated, software and the data set that underpins all that is updated. So again, this isn't the finished plan here, right? This isn't the finished plan. This is just the first pass of, hey, what are the things that we think can be immediately deferred from that list? And we get down to roughly half that number, so slightly more than half that number. And this isn't the final list, right? And this is over 10 years, right? And did you have something to say? Oh, sorry. So first pass, right? Cutting out things that we know don't meet these kind of guiding principles that we had outlined. I'm going the wrong way here. These kind of guiding principles, right? Of warm, safe, dry, right sizing, educational program needs. That was the first pass here at getting to this number. This is that same look, but we're including air conditioning, the money for the campus athletics and so forth. That number goes up some more. Again, this is just a look at what those costs are.
Sorry? Air conditioning in the elementary schools?
7 elementary schools, yeah. So this would be full air conditioning in the 7 elementary schools.
Really?
So this would include, the timely upgrading of all systems that were coming out of life, mechanical systems.
But like, these are not any new one.
So he's
We
saying
have
that-
some elementary school air conditioning already. Does that mean just replacing them? Or does this include adding it to the classrooms?
This is in the classrooms, adding air conditioning to the entirety of the building,
And replacing those all?
replacing the end units, the terminal units, the unit ventilators, possibly. I think this, Cody, is with a rather sophisticated replacement, correct? Yeah, so this isn't just replace in kind and add air conditioning. This is kind of a look at the different buildings and what they would accommodate as far as technology for air conditioning. So this is, not the bare minimum that you can get by with. This is more like this is what you should do or likely could do reasonably.
But it does include full central air conditioning for the classrooms?
It does. Yeah, it includes full central air. It includes appropriate ventilation, to the newest standards, right? And it does include the replacement of equipment that's within its life cycle during this 10-year period. Otherwise, you got a boiler that's still got 20 years left on it. The money for it's not included there, right? But that is air conditioning. All the elementary schools, a significant allowance for the campus athletics there. So
Where is that?
it's in the there's a blue box in the center there, right? And there's some overlap with mechanical systems there, but when you're talking about doing the campus athletics, there's some other ancillary like electrical things that are involved in a project like that aren't specifically site related, right? It's not just about putting down the drainage system for a turf field or buying the turf itself. There's some other systems that need to go along with that. So it's tough to put it in one category amongst these, but inside that blue box generally is where you see the cost approximately for that.
So half of it is air conditioning and replacement of the mechanical systems.
Yes.
16.
Yeah, exactly. Right, so again, this isn't the plan, this is just a look at that first pass, plus a couple of things that we know the district is considering. Right, so it's the elementary AC, which we know has been discussed previously, it's the athletics here that we know is very much a concern across the district, making sure the accuracy of that, the thing that we're undertaking right now to get a better understanding. So the next steps, right, so we have all this information, this understanding, the central repository, we've taken, some looks at what can be deferred. We do have a final report, right, it comes in report form, it's going to include this presentation, some narratives, it's going to have the printouts of all of the particulars of the understanding at the different schools, and facilities throughout the district. It'll have the Pennsylvania Economy League report in there. So kind of a big book that you'll be able to look at and reference and understand these things. But it's important to know that all these understandings, as I say, are dynamic. It's a living document because it's held on that CIP 360. You have access to that. We're going to help the district over time kind of refine these plans, justify some of these priorities, refine some of these things, hopefully meet budgets as time goes on, and enable the wise spend as you go forward into the future. So those are the kind of guiding principles that we found resonate here and with many districts, understanding those three costs there, the potential deferred, if we're talking about prioritization, those potential deferred projects, as we've mentioned here before, deserve discussion, right? So we sit down, go through those as we went through what are the near-term priorities and get an understanding of what's been deferred, why they've been deferred, right? So we're trying to drill in on, hey, what's the next thing we might want to do in an ensuing school year budget or something? We're going to look at those near-term ones, talk about all the things that deferred, why we deferred them, why we want to look at these things, and then, as I say, pending board approval, administrative approval, we go in and really dial in on what's needed for those identified items. Take that deeper look, right, more of a forensic look at the needs and develop those things and then develop the options for them and then bring some sort of implementation and solution to bear. We know that you still have those decisions to make, right? We're working through the campus athletics, understanding of options now, AC in the elementary schools. That's a decision you're going to end up with a fork in the road, right? At some point, so some of these systems age out. You'll have the opportunity to make a decision for implementing at a particular school, right? And then that's kind of like a decision that is going to carry you for 20 years, right? If you decide on implementing it a certain way at a school, that's a generational decision, right? And as they come through, that life cycle kind of goes through, and those are the kind of understandings that you get.
So can you break that down for everybody? So, just so everyone understands. So if I understand it correctly, so if an elementary system were to need an upgrade,
Yeah.
instead of doing 7 elementary schools, you would just do the full upgrade of HVAC, emphasis AC in that building.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not
So
all
or
at once, it would be.
yeah, so you would take the next one up, right? That has these internally unit ventilators. Those are the ones you see inside the classrooms that are horizontally along the wall, underneath the windows, provide heating right now. As those things age out and need to be replaced systemically across your building, you make a decision right now whether there's going to be the capability for air conditioning in that unit, whether you're instituting a central plant to accommodate that, or some other, whatever the proper implementation is. But the idea is that once you've made that decision, that's kind of a 20-year investment, right? Whatever you put in there is going to be a life cycle, 20-ish years or something like that. So you've essentially made that decision for that elementary school once you've done that in a certain way, right? So that's the inflection point, if you will, the fork in the road for that particular building that's not going to get revisited for a couple of decades, at least on that account.
And just to point out, in your projection
5 years from now, every single elementary school, their classroom HVAC will be beyond useful lifestyle.
In that number there, that is accurate, it finished
For
in,
all the elementary
31,
schools
32.
are in the red 5 years from now.
yeah.
The heating is gonna be bad in 5 years for all.
So this isn't specific to heating, right? So it's the end terminal units are, a major component of them. Cody was.
I think a good graphic that we could pull up would be the red, orange, yellow, green chart. Because you'll see that there are certain components of the system that may not have aged out.
Below that.
My apologies. I'm gonna go up to all the way up.
To the elementary school slide.
Okay. So this is today, and then this is in 5 years. So you see, as an example, the top line item is the top school is Bedminster, and this is 5 years from now. So you will not have to replace some portions of the air distribution systems, and you could hold off on a boiler plant, but the classroom HVAC will need to be replaced, in short order. Five years from today.
Classroom education, we
We have
classroom AC is
heat.
Yeah, what he's meaning is the actual units that are inside the classroom,
Heating.
those 8, right.
Those are boilers, right? Or they,
So it's called a univentilator, it just sits in there. So right now, they only provide heat.
Right.
So but those units in themselves are aging out. So in 5 years, you'll see that the one,
Correct.
5-year one. If you click on that, you'll see all the schools except Bedminster, it's 22.
Yeah, so I guess Bedminster is actually not
It's-
the best example. So these 6
Diebler's at 29
counts
years.
here. So these
The
systems, these are the units in the classrooms. And again, this is 5 years out. So you'll have systems that are anywhere from 25 to 40 years since they were installed.
so we have forced air heat coming in there? Ductwork?
They're units, the ones that kind of go underneath the window,
What kind of heat is it?
it comes from a boiler.
The boiler is oil, hot water, so the boiler heats the
Correct.
water, and so there's no ductwork in
Correct.
Right, so
there.
each
So
one,
you, so you can't just put an AC without putting either another unit or ductwork.
right,
So
so
you can't run cool water.
what I'm saying is if we're putting in new units, brand new univentilator units, in each one of those, that is the time that they could put HVAC, they could put AC along with it at that time to add on to.
You just replace,
Yeah.
you're just
So-
replacing the heating, right?
So those, when you put in a new univentilator system, they can do both. Because at that time, you could put in the chiller part to provide the AC. They can go on the roof, they can go on the end, and that would provide the chilled water for it. And each one of the schools, it would be a different solution.
That's correct.
Sellersville is all electric, some use wheels. They're all different combinations for the heating part. But what they're saying is, if we're already replacing these univentilators, when you're doing the univentilator replacement, that is a time where you could add AC onto it by adding a chiller.
So the exercise that we went through as a team, our team, the admin, Craig's team helped as well, is to look at what would it take to replace in kind, right? Because if you're gonna do an HVAC replacement, hot water only, different buildings are gonna have different requirements. Some of them might need all new piping because the piping in parts of the building is aged beyond. And you can't just replace the unit that's under the window, you have to replace some of the piping as well. Or you might need to replace a boiler plant, etc. And we did an exercise to understand what it would cost to replace what's there, building by building, to do an HVAC project, direct replacement. And then we did the same exercise, building by building, with what's system types would fit appropriately in those facilities.
You have them broken out by building.
Yes, and then this, what you see here represents the cost difference between a direct replacement and a replacement system like that provides air conditioning as well.
So is
And
this,
that could include anything from an electric service upgrade to handle the additional electric load for air conditioning, fuel oil tank replacements, right, which is not related to air conditioning, but part of the larger HVAC project. Replacing systems that, in areas of those buildings that already have air conditioning but have aged out, right? Like you had mentioned, there's cafeterias and other spaces within these buildings that do have air conditioning. So
we have the price of replacing it and the cost differential to add. So we have two different.
building by building.
Building to building.
Correct.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, building by building and appropriate system by appropriate system. And important to note that this is like the bare minimum AC in this particular level. In other words, this has a layer of sophistication to it and appropriateness where it's, if you have to spend a little bit extra to get some premium, that is worthwhile to the district, in other words, efficiency or ease of maintenance or appropriateness to that building, longevity, right, 15-year
I know
project.
all of these are different, but what would the average additional add-on to a building? Are we talking $2 million?
So, yeah, I think that's in that kind of ballpark. Per building. Yeah. When you're talking about
If you're
a
replacing.
direct replacement HVAC project versus a HVAC project that included air conditioning.
So they're really saying extra $2 million per building
I'd
to
love
add
to see those
AC.
numbers.
And
But you have
also,
to do that
this is just one way to represent that, right? This is a 5-year project in 4 phases. Just for a way to visualize what that might look like. It doesn't have to happen in these years, and it doesn't have to happen 2 or 3 buildings at a time. But obviously moving that around will change the overall costs in today's dollars because of escalation.
so would this information be in CIP 360?
Yes.
Do we have the CIP
Yeah.
360 yet? Are we online with that?
Yeah, so we have it all set up, and we can give as many passwords, logins
Yeah, I'd
as
like to go through it, just kind
necessary.
of like break it down to see where we're at.
Yeah.
I think that would
would
answer
be
some of your
something that-
questions, Ron, like being able to see that then.
That's something that we would probably want to sit down with you and have some sort of
Summary.
learning, right, so we can understand, because it doesn't look exactly like this. This
Right.
is data exported from there that we put into this layout particularly. You definitely can look at it year by year. There's cost by component, there's numbers of components, there's all sorts of assumptions. As you can see in here, we have a 4% cost escalate. You can manipulate that and do whatever type of scenario that you want so that you can manage it over time. Look at, hey, what if we did this over 7 years? Or what if we started with these 2 and did 3 more in 5 years or something like that? It can give you an idea of what those costs look like, approximations. And the data as far as costs is something that we're updating pretty regularly just because we're in the market doing these projects. We have a better understanding of what they are. So we can update those things holistically. In other words, we'll see what a vertical unit ventilator is running for today. We take those bid results, plug them in there, and then we would rerun and update your outlooks for different things, right? For instance, this is in here in 2 different scenarios, right? These buildings are in here with these upgrades and without these upgrades, right? And those are just scenarios that look by building. So again, this is not a plan, right? This is an approximation of orders of magnitude costs over time based upon the priorities that we work through with the district over time. So a lot to take in there. Totally, I'll appreciate your time in getting through these things. But the next steps here, of course, are us compiling, getting this final report. As we say, the CIP 360 data lives on, is active, it's something we manage, things get knocked off, we clean those things up, the scenarios change, we just change the scenario inside the software. Those are the different things that we'll need to kind of big decision points going forward as far as next steps. Again, thank you so much, appreciate you giving us the time, and be glad to take any more questions that you have.
I have one question. Say some of these things are in the red, and say we look at it and say, hey, they're really in good shape. Can you put that into your system and say, hey, I think it's got 5 more years on it. The
Yeah.
windows are good, it's got 10 more.
That's exactly right.
Can you update your system so then it says, oh, you're okay for this?
So there's all these bona fides in there, right? Like, it was installed then, it's this age, it's this size, it's these things. And then there's all the notes that we've taken, right, and continue to take, whether it's been a survey, something we've understood from the administration, from Craig, something we've understood from talking to the facility managers on location, say, hey, this thing's 15 years old, run like a dream, right? Or it's 5 years old, and I have a problem with it every day, right? So those type of color and understandings and narratives are inside the system.
Already.
Right, yeah, so much as we've gathered, right, which, I wouldn't say totally exhaustive, pretty detailed. We're gonna have information in there such that, there's some continuity. When the next person looks at this, they're not starting with zero. Like, oh, there's 50 unit ventilators in this, and they're, installed in 1993, and they wouldn't have any of the understandings that we've derived from all these discussions and interviews and surveys that we've done. So that stuff's absolutely maintained there. I mean, you have to go and read it, right? But that would be part and parcel of what we do over time for the district, is kind of manages understanding. Of course, the district has access to that information too, so much as you can access it and look at those things and gather those understandings so that we're on the same page over time.
But if, say that boiler or whatever,
Yeah.
is running great, it has this comment on there that has,
Yeah.
but does the life expectancy change, or is it still?
The priority
straight out?
changes. I mean, the life expectancy is what it is, right? That is not something that we've created. It's something that's derived
I
from their
understand,
standards.
But things exceed that and things come in less than that. And when if you have 10 years on a 15-year, that it's a great system, it's probably gonna last longer than 15.
Right.
And so it doesn't become a priority.
Yeah.
As opposed to the one that's failing all the time at 5 years. And does that show in these charts so that we get a better idea of what we're spending in the future?
Yeah, so the problem is with the charts, it's,
I
okay.
can shed a little light on that too. One example is just what you said, a boiler that, let's say it's 30 years old and it's in great shape, hasn't had a single issue since it was installed.
Right.
Maintenance, we surveyed and walked the facilities with the facilities managers, and they're the ones who explained to us that they had no issues with it. Generally, what happens is you have a comment, you have the date it was installed, and then we have there's a life expectancy, which John mentioned doesn't change, but then you have a date for replacement, right? So that's where the notation would say deferred 10 years due to condition, and then instead of showing it being replaced in 2025, it would get moved out to
So it would, so
2030.
the money would be moved too.
The money would be moved as
So
well.
Is it still gonna be red on the chart, or?
That's just one look at, so that chart is not a part of the software. That's a chart that we use to visualize and to
But
communicate.
you can extend or move stuff in based on the actual.
Absolutely.
It's a good way to look at things and highlight places that deserve attention, better understanding. Something's red on there, a series of things are right there, doesn't necessarily, as we say, school districts are great at, making things last dramatically longer. What it tells us is an area that we need to know more about at some point, right? If we're working through priorities, these are one of the places we're gonna start, especially if it's one of those critical systems, right? But it doesn't say, hey, it's expired, put it in this year. We have to do that as part of the assessment.
Good. It's good.
I think- I mean, just going through and looking at like the 5 years from now and, all the red that's on it. I think first of all, to say to the facilities team, we've done a bang up job for keeping things. I mean, look at the heating plant at West Rockville, 40 years, and HVAC at West Rockville, 40 years. I mean, there are fixtures in there that are last a long time, so, and I definitely want to give the appreciation to them for doing these things, but then I also look at it and I'm like, where were we forward thinking to be able to say, our heating plant at West Rock Hill is gonna be at 40 years, life expectancy? I mean, like,
Well, and that's something that I have to admit, even I was thrown at first when I saw the colors, but what you have to keep in mind is they're, like they said, they're basing that on industry standards.
industry standards.
So if anything, again, like you just said, it's a credit to the preventative maintenance plan that it's working, and that these guys are keeping things working beyond their shelf life, which is the goal. But it's how long you let these things go before you start to consider it, so that's why they're
Yeah.
incorporating it into the plan.
Yeah.
And understand that any time that we're putting up those kind of graphs that take a whole bunch of granular data and put it into something, synthesize something like that, there's shades of gray amongst all this. It says 40 years, doesn't mean every single thing there 40 years old. Doesn't mean it hasn't been touched in 40
Right.
years.
Yeah, it's replaced, but, I mean, I think just looking at it and saying, you know, generally speaking, of the heating plant at West Rock Hill is approaching 40 years, 35 years right now. To be able to be forward thinking and say, we should be looking at replacing this, because with every year, we run the risk of something catastrophic happening, and now we have no heat at the schools.
Yeah.
So I guess, you know, it's like 2020, it would have been good to be able to like address some of these things earlier, but, like I said, I just wanted to say thanks to all the facilities team. I mean, they've done a great job being able to keep everything up and running this long.
The maintenance guys have been
Yeah, they're good group of guys, so.
Could you tell me how many times that has been repaired in the last 5 years? That board,
going into FMX, yeah, I could pull tickets
I mean,
and tell you how many times it's been worked on.
you have to manually go and do that, or is there some sort of report available that says, hey, these are the things that we're dealing with?
No, I could pull a report on FMX and show how many tickets have been installed, have been implemented just
For a particular piece of
for a particular
mechanical
piece of
work.
equipment.
Like,
Because that really gives you an idea of how well it's doing.
even that boiler, like, you get yearly inspections on it.
Well, we have our annual inspections that are done, so I mean, that
So
gives
there's
us
always
information
eyes
to act on.
Yeah.
So I mean, between us and the annual inspections, we get regular data to go on. So what we're doing to maintain them, and then also the annual inspections, and then what they tell us is, hey, this is what we saw, either a clean bill of health, or this is what needs to be worked on, and they would come in and do it. But between all the sets of eyes that are on them, I would say it's far and few between that we're ever in a true jam.
But my point is, if something's taking a lot more maintenance, then that would certainly bump it up.
If something, yeah, it would bump it up on the priority list. If something was a regular problem, that's when we would go, hey, that's something to consider sooner than
Yeah,
later.
it could be a younger unit
And if something is a younger unit, or we're not seeing very many issues with it, it just, we continue to prioritize what's immediate versus what's more long-term. And that's the information that they give us to work off of, and then we evaluate it and make a decision.
we just don't want to spend money too early.
Oh, yeah, obviously, yeah. I wouldn't want to jump the gun either.
We also don't want to catastrophic.
If there's
So you
something
start
that's not on the
moving around.
cusp of being an immediate issue, then it's gonna be deferred.
Thank you for the presentation. It was
Yeah, appreciate it.
pretty thorough, and I also wanted to publicly thank you for doing the track upgrade
Oh,
this
yeah.
year and implementing it. It was done on
Yeah.
time and ready for school, and it was much better than the tennis courts the last time we tried. So thank you.
Yeah, credit to Craig, working closely with Bob, and we had a great plan for the professional approach, success. We like
Thank
it.
you, Craig.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Bob was fantastic, right? Him and I tag
Nice to
teamed
get
a lot.
things done in time.
Yeah, yeah, so I think the,
Oh, and under budget?
sorry?
Did you say under budget?
Yeah.
Defer to Sean.
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's even better. Thank you.
Perfect. Appreciate it. If it's, unless anybody else has any questions, I think we're good. Move on.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
All right, so moving on to 3, we have obsolete items for review, so we'll start with central.
Yeah, just a few things for obsolete this month. Central Middle School has some instruments listed there that will go to public surplus. And another list with some outdated electronic equipment. There was a new sound system put in at Central, so this is outdated equipment that will be recycled. Moving on to the high school, some equipment listed there, that'll go to scrap. Moving on to West Rock Hill, another list of various equipment, that listed as going to scrap. And then at South Middle School, we have two items, or two lists. One list has a universal weight machine on it. That's in pretty bad condition, not used anymore. That will be scrapped. And then we have some equipment listed there on a, which will also be scrapped. So, that's all we have
Perfect.
for that.
And with that, that is the end of the Facilities Committee. The next Facilities Committee meeting is scheduled for September 15th. Moving on to
Finance, welcome to the Finance Committee. Where did you come? The August 18th Finance meeting. And do we have any public comment?
Nope.
Nobody. Let me scan the crowd again.
Doing great, keep it up.
All right, so moving on, we'll get into the contracts for approval. Sean, you want to give us a rundown?
Yes, sir. Contracts for this month. The first contract is UHS of Doylestown, also known as Foundations Behavioral Health. This company provides behavioral health services for our students. The contract is for this coming school year, and the prices are itemized in Appendix A for the daily rates for our students when they attend that school.
Any questions on that one? Use those.
Yep. Yes. Yep, yes, that's just a renewal. B is
Did
Springtown.
they raise their prices?
I'm sorry.
Did they raise their prices?
I'd have to, I don't know that off the top of my head, I'd have to find out for you. Okay. B, the Springtown School Education, this is for educational services for a student identified as 2026-01 for the next school year, and the cost is $147,337.66.
So is that chosen by the parent or by us, this program?
I believe that is a combination of the parents' IEP team with the parents. Yes.
Is this the first year or is this continuation?
I believe this is a new.
No. So the total cost 150.
147. Okay. Letter C has 3 settlement agreements for students identified as 2026-02, 2026-05, and 2026-04. And I believe all that information has been previously shared with you by Mr. Johnson. We went over that one. Moving on, letter D, Valley Forge Educational Services. Educational services for student identified as 2026-03 for next school year, and the cost is $91,500. Letter E is a renewal. This is our sponsor agreement between the Bucksmont Academy and Penridge School District Nutritional Services Department to provide meals for the Bucksmont Academy for next school year. This will be the 3rd year we've done this. And those meals are generated out of the kitchen at South and sent to Bucksmont Academy. Okay, moving on. F is Healthy E-Tools. This is a renewal of our software for our medical records used by our nursing staff. This is actually a contract 2025 through 2028. It's $8,151 per year. That software for the nurses. Moving on, letter G, we have Music Theater International. This is for the Central Middle School Spring Musical. Cost is $740. Moving on to letter H, JH Productions. This is the audiovisual company that we've used, I believe now this is the third year for our middle and high schools. $50 per hour, and they take care of the audio and lighting services when those systems are being used in the auditoriums. They do it for outside agencies or organizations that come in and rent the facilities. These folks have to be there, and whoever's renting the facility has to pay for the costs. But we also use them some, especially for like our musicals, when we're doing a high-level production with those systems. These folks come in and do.
They do the sound thing for the musical too?
Yep.
They do a great job.
Yes. Mhm. Yep. Okay, moving on, I, J, and K are suburban water technology. This is PADP operator services for Siler Elementary, for Bedminster Elementary, and for Grass Elementary. And the cost is $150 per hour.
So how is that limited, or
Can you answer questions?
is that open? If there's, how do you know you're getting a value? Because if you spend 10 hours there per hour, right?
I mean, I could look into comparative pricing, but they have been the group that we've been using for my time here, and we haven't found anything better so far as pricing goes, but I could
By
see
the
if there's
hour.
better.
So does everyone do it by the hour? They won't just quote the building fixed? Do they come out, how often do they come out?
They come out, I believe it's biannually.
Oh, okay, just, okay, so it's not sizable enough. Okay.
Okay.
Can you tell me what they spend, what we spend with them every year? Just by year? Just curious.
All right, moving on. L, letter L. This is Bucks County Intermediate Unit, safe to say, something tip response services. This is just an amendment to the master services agreement that was put in place back in May. And really, they clarified the language of their original contract, spelled out the hours, which they would be, and the dates more specifically. And the cost stays the same as it was back in May. So just really, I think the IU decided to redo the contract and make it more specific.
You said hours? Does that mean they're not available? 24?
No, they're available, they just, it wasn't in the original contract, so this specifies the times. So, just as a reminder, this is a safe to say monitoring service that the Bucks IU will do for us after hours and on the weekends and during the holidays. So they just spelled out the actuals. I think
So we
it was-
handle it during working hours?
Yes, we would get the tips during working hours, and I believe it's from
So
6.
it's 7:24, just with between the two.
Correct. But I believe they added 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Yep. Monday through Thursday, and then
They have the weekend.
the weekend is 24 hours a
Yes.
day, and we pick back up Monday morning at 6 a.m. So all that information wasn't specifically spelled out before. Okay. The next one is Epic Tours. This is Central Middle School field trip to New York City on January 28th, and this is just the cost of the transportation for that field trip, and that's student and parent paid.
So does everyone have the opportunity, who gets to go to the show?
To this field trip?
Doesn't say it on.
I mean, do the kids have to pay to do this?
Yeah.
Or like the parents are paying? for it?
Yes, parents are paying for this, yeah.
I guess it's course, because it's Sistolino, but I don't know what grade.
Are all
It's
kids
for
going?
56 It's 56 students, so it's not all kids.
Okay.
And it's also the Sistolino, which is chorus, which is, I guess is maybe 6. I don't know. It doesn't say on there, I did look too.
So we'll get that information.
Just make sure that everyone has the opportunity. Sounds like a great trip.
Okay. Next one, Transfinder, is the school boundary study for 25-26. Cost is $8,500. This is a professional services agreement to help us determine lines of attendance within the district. Next one is Minuteman Security and Life Safety. This is for DMP intrusion system upgrade at Central Middle School. Cost is $6,945 with a monthly cellular fee. So this is to upgrade the
Upgrade to a cellular dialer for burglar alarm Central.
Right now, does the burglar alarm work?
Currently, the phone line for it has been turned off, which is why we are looking to do the upgrade. This is something we've been working on upgrading in the process, but it kind of made me do Central before the other building I was going to do.
Who cut the, they
Verizon
terminated the line?
terminated.
They want your business.
Will it be up and running?
It's something that's happened in the past, like the phone line would get shut off and we would upgrade to a cellular dialer
Yeah.
to get it back up and running. But sometimes Verizon will switch off the line and make the decision for you.
So when would it be up and running?
It would be up and running. Once we approve this, they would get the device in and installed. I would anticipate probably, I would have to, it would be a 3-week turnaround.
We'll talk about that.
Okay, and then the last contract, letter P, first class entertainment. This is DJ services for the Central Middle School dance. $450 cost. And that is the student/parent.
We've used them before too. We did that. I assume they're satisfied.
Number 3 is Bucks County Intermediate Unit. If you recall, back in, I believe it was June, we put in place their contract for the year to provide special education services for the district. This is in addition to that, those services. This is to add the educational service for the AS3 program at West Rock Hill Elementary School during the 25-26 school year. Tuition costs based on estimate of 7 students in that program will be $692,461, with an additional estimate of $90,366 for related services. That also will be based on the students' needs. So this will be in addition to the contract we already put in place.
So this is not in the budget for last year.
This is a change in the budget. The budget contains costs for that program to be done in-house with teacher and 2 aides. This is, we'll switch those costs and do it as a contracted service with the IU. But
I think we all agree that it's good that we switch it, right? I think that's their specialty. We're one of the few districts that do it, so. But how much will it cost us from, the $692 is not additional cost, there's some offset from that?
correct, the additional cost is about $460,000.
That we would normally incur within it.
No, that is the
Sorry.
additional.
The additional.
460 is the additional cost.
So how would those costs go away?
How are those,
The other 200, so.
the other 200 and some?
Yeah.
That other 200 and some thousand dollars will be used to pay for the 692. We want to determine another $460,000 within the current budget to cover that.
Is that it?
That's
Any
what-
questions?
Keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
Number 4, we have 2 bid lists from the Bucks County IU. We piggyback on their bids for new and recap tires, and we piggyback on the IU's bid for paper for our copier machines. So you can see on the spreadsheets the listed items as far as the tires and the prices, and also then the paper. Okay.
So these are the other vendors quoted? Thank you. IU one again?
Yeah, you, yep.
Joe.
Yeah, you always,
Yeah.
That's good, as long as you keep it in line, right?
yeah, actually, they're doing the bid, we're piggybacking on their bid, so they're putting all these out to bid
In vast quantity.
in vast quantities for all the districts that want to be a part of that, which we do. So they put these out to bid, and then as long as we piggyback on that with them, then we can use the same price.
Now, if they give us an offer for it, and we found something better, we can still go the other route.
Sure.
Do we check that at all, or do we just go with what they bid?
Generally, for these two, we go with these bids, because they're buying paper for all 13 districts.
So everybody's involved?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I can't compete with that,
Yeah.
with just vendor.
Well, if everybody's
Just like the fuel, we also do fuel.
fuel, does everybody buy from them?
Yes.
Those, I agree.
Okay, and then number 5 is just a list of student activity counts. The A through E are from Central Middle School for drama, yearbook, service learning, general purpose, and student council. And then F through H are South Middle School for student council, drama, and general purpose. And then I and J are North Middle School for the yearbook and the student council. So those are all clubs that are being renewed and have some funds to carry over from last year.
Do we see a lot more of this?
We saw a lot of those in June. These are kind of the stragglers that didn't make it in time for our June meeting.
So does every club do this every year?
Every club does this every year. They either renew their club or they ask to close their club. And that's everything I have for this month.
Any other comments, questions? We'll wrap it up. Thank you all for watching or attending. And the next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for